enlarged on this little side. But that explains the music though, right? She's hurting. And I never told nobody. I just kept doing every show. I finished my tour out like that. My heart kind of still is like.
NBA YoungBoy recently opened up about serious health concerns, saying something may be wrong with his heart and that he is stepping back from music. For an artist who kept recording through prison, house arrest, and years of intense pressure, hearing him talk this openly about his health is a lot to take in, and according to what he shared publicly, this was not a moment he took lightly. The bigger story is the pressure and lifestyle surrounding YoungBoy for years, and how that may have affected him physically and mentally. There have been plenty of public moments that showed just how much he was carrying, but it is important not to turn speculation into medical fact. What we can examine is what YoungBoy himself has said, what has been publicly documented, and why this announcement could mark a major shift in his life and career. Stay with us, because there is a lot more behind this story. Yo, what's good, fam? Today, we are breaking down the full story behind NBA YoungBoy's shocking health revelation, what he has publicly said about his condition, what years of public evidence show about the life he has been living, and why this moment could become one of the biggest turning points of his career. Let's get into it. To understand why this hit so hard, you have to understand who Kentrell Deshawn Gaulden actually is and where he came from. Born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1999, YoungBoy did not grow up with a safety net. He came from difficult circumstances that exposed him to street life and serious pressure at a young age, long before he had the experience to fully understand where those choices could lead. He started recording music seriously as a teenager, and by the time he was 17 and 18, he was already putting up streaming numbers that artists twice his age spend entire careers chasing. He did not become a major name because of some perfectly planned industry campaign. He broke through because his music connected with people on a deeply personal level, and that connection was hard to ignore. The pain in his voice and lyrics felt less like a performance and more like a personal record of what he was going through. Fans picked up on that immediately. What made his rise different from so many artists in his generation was the sheer amount of music he released, combined with how openly he addressed subjects like depression, anxiety, relationship problems, violence, legal trouble, substance use, and family conflict. You name it, YoungBoy has touched on it in his music. He rarely presented a polished version of his life for the public. Instead, project after project, he gave listeners a raw look at his experiences, and that honesty helped turn him into one of the most streamed artists in the world. He built one of hip-hop's biggest and most loyal fan bases, while his personal life remained surrounded by pressure, controversy, and constant scrutiny. That is the contradiction sitting right at the center of YoungBoy's story. The same pain, chaos, and non-stop grind that made his music connect with millions of people also came with enormous pressure on his mind and body. Now, let's get into what he actually said, because the exact details matter here. During his interview with Funny Marco, previewed on August 9th, 2026, YoungBoy was asked how many albums he had left in him. Instead of giving the usual hype response or playing things up for the camera, he gave one of the most serious answers of his public career. He explained that music was not what he was focused on right now. Then came the reason. YoungBoy said a doctor told him the left side of his heart was swollen. He even added, almost thinking out loud, "That explains the music though, right?" That line hits differently because it suggests YoungBoy himself is starting to think about the connection between what he has been dealing with and what he is now being told about his health. But let's make one thing crystal clear. When YoungBoy said the left side of his heart was swollen, that was his own public description. It is not enough information to establish a complete medical diagnosis. The phrase swollen heart can refer to different medical issues, and nobody outside his healthcare team can say exactly what condition he has based only on that statement. Medically, an enlarged heart is known as cardiomegaly, and it can have several possible causes. Another condition that can involve the left side of the heart is left ventricular hypertrophy, where the muscle wall of the left ventricle becomes thicker. But from YoungBoy's comments alone, we do not know his exact diagnosis, how serious it is, what caused it, or what treatment his doctors have recommended. That distinction matters throughout this conversation. We can discuss the medical basics without pretending we know details that have not been made public, and to understand why the left side of the heart matters, you have to understand the job it performs. The left ventricle is one of the heart's main power chambers, pumping oxygen-rich blood through the aorta and out to the rest of the body. Every time your heart beats, the left ventricle is doing major work. When the heart has to pump against increased pressure or deal with certain long-term conditions, the muscle can become thicker or larger. Think about any other muscle in the body. When it faces repeated demands, it can adapt to those demands. But the heart is different from a muscle you are simply trying to build at the gym. Structural changes inside the heart are not automatically healthy. Depending on the underlying cause, they can interfere with how efficiently the heart works, contribute to abnormal rhythms, or raise the risk of serious complications. How serious any change is depends on the cause, the individual's overall health, and how far the condition has progressed. And once again, those details about YoungBoy have not been publicly established. But here is where the story gets serious. Even without knowing his exact diagnosis, we can examine the public record of the intense life he has lived and understand why this announcement has people paying close attention. The warning signs people are discussing did not appear overnight. Let's go back to July 2023, because this is where the public timeline gets especially concerning. YoungBoy's cat had an Instagram account, yes, his actual cat, Neon Celine. That month, a post appeared on the account that immediately caught fans' attention. Written from the cat's point of view, the caption claimed that the cat had been seeing a lot of its dad and described him as being in such poor health that it was scary, including concerns about his mental state. The post also claimed that he was taking 20 Xanax a day and included the #help. Then, in the comments, the account added another serious claim that he had allegedly been urinating blood for 2 straight days. Now, we need to pump the brakes here. A post from a cat's Instagram account is not a medical report, and we cannot know from that post alone who wrote it or whether every detail and number was accurate. What we can say is that the post existed, the account was associated with YoungBoy, and fans reacted quickly. People who had followed his public behavior for years said the claims felt alarming, but were not completely out of nowhere. The broader picture was of an artist who had openly discussed serious struggles, both physically and mentally, for a long time. Then, in February 2024, concerns grew again when YoungBoy posted an image of himself on a floor surrounded by what appeared to be prescription medication, alongside a cup that commenters associated with lean. He captioned the post by explaining why he does not answer when his phone rings. The image sparked another wave of reactions, and fans were left questioning what was happening behind the scenes. This also was not the first time substance use had appeared in YoungBoy's public image. His music had referenced drugs and prescription medication for years, including songs such as Drug Addiction, Blasian, and others that mentioned substances like Xanax, Percocet, and codeine mixtures. He did not exactly keep those themes hidden. They appeared in his lyrics, his public posts, and the stories surrounding his career. But now we have to separate the public record from assumptions. Seeing references to substance use does not tell us exactly what YoungBoy has taken, how often he has taken it, or what caused his current heart condition. Those are questions only his doctors and YoungBoy himself can properly answer. What we can discuss is why certain substances raise legitimate health concerns. Xanax, or alprazolam, is a benzodiazepine commonly prescribed for anxiety and panic disorders. When taken exactly as prescribed under medical supervision, it can have legitimate medical uses. But misuse, especially at high doses or alongside other depressants, can become dangerous very quickly. Large amounts of benzodiazepines can cause extreme sedation, impaired coordination, and slowed breathing. When combined with other substances that depress the nervous system, the danger can increase significantly. Serious poisoning can affect blood pressure, breathing, consciousness, and overall cardiovascular stability. That is why claims about heavy substance use should be treated as a health warning, not as entertainment or proof of a specific diagnosis. The combination of benzodiazepines with opioids or with substances like lean, a mixture typically involving codeine and promethazine, can be especially dangerous because both can depress the central nervous system. When they are combined, their effects on breathing, alertness, and other vital functions can become much stronger, creating a potentially life-threatening situation. That risk becomes even more serious when misuse continues over an extended period. Lean, which has been part of Southern hip-hop culture for decades, carries its own health risks. Codeine can cause dangerous sedation and, in some circumstances, affect breathing and heart function. Promethazine can also affect blood pressure and heart rhythm. Neither medication is intended to be used recreationally in the way that has sometimes been portrayed in popular culture. Research into long-term opioid misuse has also linked it with serious health problems, including certain cardiovascular complications. Some substances may additionally have toxic effects on the myocardium, which is the muscle tissue of the heart itself. When the heart is repeatedly exposed to harmful substances, its ability to work properly can potentially be affected over time. The left ventricle already performs some of the heart's hardest work, pushing oxygen-rich blood throughout the body. Under certain medical conditions, the heart muscle can become enlarged, thickened, or weakened as it responds to ongoing strain, and this is not always something that happens in one dramatic moment. Some heart conditions can develop gradually while a person continues working, performing, recording, and living their normal life. But we have to draw a firm line between medical facts and speculation. We are not saying substance use caused YoungBoy's reported heart issue. Only his doctors, with access to his examinations and medical records, can determine what is actually happening. What has been publicly documented about his history simply provides context for why his recent comments have caused such a strong reaction. Then, there is the psychological side of the story, and that part cannot be separated from the physical. YoungBoy has spent much of his career speaking openly about depression, anxiety, emotional pain, and the pressure surrounding his life. He has addressed those struggles in interviews, through his music, and on social media. In December 2025, he also shared concerning messages online that appeared to suggest he was going through a difficult period mentally. Among those posts, he discussed wanting to release an album and then die. He also shared an image referencing Chris Benoit, a figure connected to one of the most disturbing tragedies in professional wrestling history. Those posts understandably raised serious concerns among fans and put an even brighter spotlight on the pressure YoungBoy appeared to be carrying. These were not random posts that disappeared without a reaction. They appeared to show a person going through serious emotional distress, and they came from an artist who had spent years putting his pain directly in front of the public. For YoungBoy, that pattern was already familiar to fans who had watched him turn difficult experiences into music. And mental health and physical health do not exist in completely separate boxes. Chronic stress, depression, and anxiety can activate the body's stress response, affecting things like heart rate and blood pressure. During intense stress, the body releases hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol. Those chemicals can raise blood pressure, increase heart rate, and cause blood vessels to tighten as the body prepares to respond to a perceived threat. The bigger concern is when that stress response becomes a long-term pattern, when someone is dealing with severe pressure for months or years, rather than one isolated stressful moment. The cardiovascular system can be affected in meaningful ways. There is also a condition called stress cardiomyopathy, sometimes known as broken heart syndrome, where intense emotional or physical stress temporarily weakens part of the heart muscle. But even here, we need to keep the facts straight. Stress cardiomyopathy is a specific medical condition, and there is no public evidence showing that YoungBoy has it. We cannot take a general medical explanation and turn it into a diagnosis. What we can say is that prolonged stress, poor sleep, anxiety, and depression can all have real effects on overall health. Sleep problems can add another layer. Ongoing anxiety and depression can disrupt normal sleep patterns, which can affect blood pressure, metabolism, energy levels, and the body's ability to recover. The emotional and physical sides of health are connected, and YoungBoy has publicly described carrying heavy emotional pressure for much of his adult life. Then add the period he spent under house arrest in Utah. For an extended stretch, YoungBoy was restricted to his home, far from his Louisiana community and separated from much of the normal life he had known. His legal situation placed strict limits on where he could go and who he could be around. Eventually, a federal judge modified some restrictions to give him greater access to mental health treatment, highlighting how serious those circumstances had become. Now picture the situation. You are one of the biggest names in rap, your music is being streamed on a massive scale, fans are watching your every move, yet you are stuck inside a home far from where you grew up, dealing with legal pressure and uncertainty about your future. You cannot simply perform whenever you want, you cannot move around freely, but there is one thing you can still control: the music, so you keep recording, again and again. During some of the most restrictive periods of his life, YoungBoy remained remarkably productive, turning the studio into an outlet while everything around him felt increasingly difficult to control. He released project after project under conditions that most people would have struggled to handle. That contradiction, massive output on the outside, while serious personal struggles may have been happening underneath, is a huge part of why the heart revelation hit fans so hard. From the outside, YoungBoy looked like someone who simply refused to stop. But what the public cannot see is what that non-stop pace may be doing to his overall health. Performing at a high level brings another layer of physical demand. Touring can mean long travel days, late nights, intense performances, dehydration risks, and inconsistent sleep. Night after night, the body has to recover and then do it all over again. Add the potential effects of stress, poor sleep, or substance misuse into that picture, and the physical burden can become even more complicated. But again, we cannot claim those factors caused YoungBoy's reported heart problem. According to reports surrounding his recent situation, he continued performing after learning about the issue before eventually deciding to step back. If accurate, that says a lot about the relentless mentality that has followed him throughout his career. It also raises an important question. What happens when the same grind that built your career starts forcing you to slow down? YoungBoy has built his identity around constant movement. Recording, releasing music, performing, and pushing through setbacks have been part of his story for years. Choosing to step back from that routine is therefore much bigger than simply changing his schedule. During the Funny Marco interview, when he was asked how many albums he had left in him, YoungBoy reportedly answered 1 or 2. For another artist, that could sound like plenty of material. Coming from someone known for releasing music at an extraordinary pace, though, it can feel like a completely different statement. Then he explained that music is not what he is focused on right now. That is a major shift. Music has been one of YoungBoy's main ways of expressing pain, frustration, relationships, and everything happening around him. If he genuinely steps away, he could be walking away from one of the biggest outlets he has relied on throughout his career. But here is where the story needs some real fact-checking. The phrase "slowly dying" has been circulating around this situation, and while it captures the fear and emotion surrounding the news, we should not present it as a medical fact. YoungBoy did not publicly say that doctors told him he was terminally ill. He also did not publicly announce that he is literally dying in the clinical sense of the phrase. What he did share was a serious concern about his heart and a decision to step back from music. Those details are concerning enough on their own, without adding a diagnosis that he never actually gave. What YoungBoy actually said is that his heart is swollen and that he is stepping away from music to focus on his health. The dramatic phrase "slowly dying" speaks to the fear surrounding the situation, but it should not be treated as a confirmed medical prognosis. Only YoungBoy and his medical team know the full picture. They are the ones who know his diagnosis, how serious it is, what treatment he needs, and what his long-term outlook could be. We cannot determine those answers from a short interview clip. What we can understand is that an enlarged heart does not automatically mean a person is facing a fatal outcome. Some causes of cardiomegaly can be treated when doctors identify and address the underlying problem. Depending on the cause, treatment could involve managing blood pressure, treating an infection, correcting certain deficiencies, or addressing another medical condition. Other forms of heart enlargements are more complicated and may require long-term monitoring and treatment. The outcome depends on the specific cause, the condition of the heart, and how the person responds to medical care. There is simply no responsible way to predict YoungBoy's future without that information. Doctors can use tools such as echocardiograms, electrocardiograms, blood tests, and cardiac imaging to understand what is happening inside the heart. These tests can show doctors how the heart is structured, how it is pumping, and whether there are other issues that need attention. But what those tests reveal about YoungBoy belongs to him and his healthcare team, and there are plenty of possible contributors to heart changes that have nothing to do with substance use. Long-term high blood pressure, for example, can cause the left ventricle to become thicker because the heart has to work harder against increased resistance. Genetics and family history can also play a major role in cardiovascular disease. The public does not have YoungBoy's complete family medical history, so there is no way to rule out inherited conditions. Certain forms of cardiomyopathy can affect younger people, sometimes before obvious symptoms become noticeable. Nutrition, hydration, sleep, stress, and other aspects of lifestyle can also influence overall cardiovascular health, but none of these factors can be singled out as the cause of YoungBoy's condition based on what has been publicly shared. Real medical conditions are rarely that simple. What this moment really represents is a collision between the image and the reality. For years, YoungBoy's public image has been built around being unstoppable. The non-stop grind, the huge volume of music, and the ability to turn legal problems, personal losses, and public scrutiny into another song. The image says nothing can slow him down, but the human body does not care about an image. It has limits. Years of poor sleep, prolonged stress, physical strain, or other health challenges can add up, and eventually the body can force a person to stop and pay attention. That may be the most important part of what YoungBoy is facing right now. YoungBoy is 26 years old, and that alone makes this situation especially serious. Major heart conditions are not limited to older adults, so hearing him publicly discuss a heart problem at this age is something people are rightfully paying attention to. But we also have to keep the facts straight. We do not know his exact diagnosis, what caused it, or how severe it is. What we do know is that YoungBoy has spent much of his life operating at an extreme pace. He built a massive career while dealing with legal problems, emotional struggles, isolation, public pressure, and circumstances that would test almost anyone. His music and social media have also made parts of that struggle visible to millions of people. There have been public references to substance use throughout his career, but we should not assume those things caused his heart condition. What matters now is whether he gets the medical care and support he needs, follows his doctor's advice, and makes whatever changes are necessary for his health. At 26, this could be a major wake-up call. The biggest question facing Kentrell Gaulden is not whether he has 1 or 2 albums left in him. It is whether he is ready to change the way he has been living. That means staying on top of his medical follow-up, finding out exactly what is happening with his heart, and addressing any underlying conditions his doctors identify. It could also mean taking a serious look at sleep, stress, substance use, nutrition, and the non-stop pace that has defined his career. None of that is easy, especially when the same relentless drive that may have put pressure on his life is also a huge part of what made him successful. The challenge is finding a healthier balance without losing the qualities that made YoungBoy who he is as an artist. His raw honesty, emotional music, and incredible work ethic helped turn him into one of the biggest names in hip-hop. But continuing at full speed without taking his health seriously could carry consequences far more important than another album or another streaming record. For the fans who have followed him for years, this revelation hits differently. There is real love and loyalty in YoungBoy's fan base. Millions of people have connected with his music because they heard someone putting pain, anger, heartbreak, and survival into words. So when that same person admits that his health is forcing him to reconsider everything, it naturally hits hard. For years, YoungBoy showed the world that he could keep moving through legal battles, isolation, personal losses, and relentless public scrutiny. He turned those experiences into music and built a career that seemed almost impossible to slow down. But being tough does not mean ignoring your body when it tells you something is wrong. Now the fight is different. It is not about proving that he can survive another setback or release another project. It is about protecting the person behind the music. The most important decisions YoungBoy makes from here may not happen in a recording studio or in front of a camera. They may happen privately through medical care, healthier choices, rest, and the support system around him. So what do you think about YoungBoy's situation? Do you think this will finally push him to slow down and put his health first? Or do you think that non-stop grind will pull him right back in? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know. And if you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with somebody who follows YoungBoy's story. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next breakdown, and check out the video on screen right now for more.